bit of change of scenery today with coronavirus and property investors. But today I wanted to cover, are people going to leave China in droves? And I think it's an interesting one because, you know, there's lots of talk on the internet about, you know, China caused this and all the conspiracy theories. And I'm sorry to disappoint you today, but we're not dealing with any conspiracy theories. But not only that, what I really want to do too is just talk through practical, you know, economics and practical approaches to this, because it's all good to say, you know, knee-jerk reaction, you know, China caused this, China had a delay in their, you know, in the supply chain, and therefore lots of people are going to realize that they can't rely on China and are going to move away. And the reality is that simple doesn't play out in economics, basic economics, yeah, of supply and demand and price inelasticity and all these sort of concepts, which don't worry about them now, because the reality is why I think people, now lots of people can talk about it and lots of people will say, yes, I'm not going to rely on one supplier, I'm not going to rely on one country, I'm not going to, you know, I'm going to spread it out, okay? But here's the reality, yeah? The fact is, it is bloody expensive to get things manufactured and to get things built, you know, overseas. Because when you think about it, it's not just a case of going, well, actually, what I'll do is I'll do half over in China and half in Vietnam or Indonesia or wherever it is, India. You know, the reality is, as soon as you do that and you split your thing, and whether it's 20, you know, 50-50, 20-80, whatever it is, it doesn't really matter. The fact is, you're now going from one country supplying you, which means legals for one, which means tariffs and duties and, you know, contracts and all these sort of things, and as well as, you know, economies of scale. You know, all of a sudden you're splitting your economies of scale. All of a sudden you've got your various risks with different businesses, and, you know, so as well, you've got to have people who know that market and also the other market. So when you start adding that up, what you're going to find is those costs start to skyrocket. And when those costs start to skyrocket, one of the whole things about supply chain is, yes, you can say, well, actually, this is a risk. But the reality is, when you sit down and you go, yeah, you know what, we've been in business for 50 years and this has never happened before. It's never really been an issue before. And this was a once in 100-year thing. And actually, you know what, it wasn't that bad. Maybe what we need to do is, rather than pay all this additional money to try and run two countries supplying us, maybe what we need to do instead is actually focus on having more inventory on hand. And that's the initial reaction will be, is, well, maybe we just focus on having more inventory on hand, and then what will happen is, give it a year or two and, you know, the managing directors will go, hold on, why are we stocking so much inventory? We want just in time. And all of a sudden they'll start dropping the inventories, and in 100 years time we'll be back in the same situation. I don't see lots of, now some countries will, some companies, sorry, will. They will change from China, or they will, you know, change their entire thing. But the reality is, they're, you know, out of the fire and into the cauldron sort of thing. You know, so, you know, what China has is an amazing, unique selling proposition from a marketing perspective. You know, it is an amazing place right now. And the reason is it because it has such a massive pool of talent to pull from. Now, it can do cheap stuff. It can do high-tech stuff. It can do pretty much the entire, you know, spectrum of things. And that's what's amazing about it. You know, so the reality is, where do you find that? You know, and where do you find that where they're very pro-business and pro-friendly? And yes, you have to get used to the way Chinese do business, which might be different the way from Aussies or the UK or Americans, whatever, do business. But the reality is, a lot of those lines and a lot of those relationships are already built. Are you just going to up and say, right, 50%'s out of China and now 50%'s going across to Vietnam? Oh, who speaks Vietnamese in the country, in the company? You know, no one. Okay, fair enough. Let's hire somebody in. Okay, so we need solicitors. We're gonna have to get a law firm who can read all our contracts. We're gonna have to, you know, so the reality is, when you start looking at all these sort of things, you realize the practicality, the knee-jerk reaction is one thing, yeah? The practicality is something altogether different. And when you start factoring in that the practicalities of going, well, actually, I'm gonna split my supply lines, it just doesn't hold up in practical sense. Emotions, 100%. Yeah, you know, we need to do that. We need to get rid of the risk. But very quickly you realize that when you've got a choice of risk or reward, yeah, the risks soon get rationalized away and the reward becomes the motivator. And that's just human nature. So, are we actually going to see a massive exodus from China? I don't think so. I think what we'll see actually is China. China is becoming more and more the go-to guys right now, just like Japan was, post World War II, and when I say post World War II, not maybe immediately after, because obviously they had to rebuild it, but then it became the very cheap manufacturing, high-tech manufacturing. Initially, Japanese goods were the worst in the world, and what happened? Very quickly, they got their supply chains worked out, and they were the high-quality place. If you wanted high quality, that's where you went, But look, there will be some people who leave and some people move over. So places like Korea and Vietnam and Indonesia and these places that have, really high-tech, high quality and low, low wage sort of places, they're going to benefit from this, okay? But that's not going to be so much, that's a general trend that we're seeing anyway, is that as China becomes more expensive, we're going to start to look at cheaper places, and that's why we'll be looking at the Vietnams and the Indonesias, because they have a large pool of young people who can actually, become technical and operate these sort of things, which is good news. So guys, that's a quick one today. I just thought I'd get that out because I think it's really important that the headlines, if you just read the headlines, you're going to get sucked into all sorts of crap. And it's interesting because I called this, will people leave China in droves, or will manufacturers leave China in droves? And then I thought about it. I thought, actually, you know what? If I want to get more views, I should be writing something shocking like, everyone's leaving China in droves. Yeah? Because that negative headline pulls more people than a positive headline, or a question. So, and unfortunately, that's the world we live in. Unless we garner much more, alarmist headlines, we don't get the views. So as a YouTuber, it's hard to sit there and go, should I do what feels right, or should I do what gets more views? And that's the dilemma that all YouTubers face, and not just YouTubers, all marketers, in fact, because there's so many messages out there and they're so sensationalized when the reality behind it is something totally different. And I find that with, a lot of when I look at a headline and then I go deeper to the headline and I look at the headline and think, wow, hold on a sec. And then I read the actual article and I find out that's just a ridiculous headline. It's got nothing to do with the article. And that the headline comes from one line in a 80-page document. And when I go through that 80-page document and I look at the data, it actually said something totally different. But we took the sensationalize and we blow the sensationalize up. And unfortunately, us as humans have an ability to be suckered in. It's a little, a failure in our, evolution, if you believe that or whatever. There's these gaps in our brains that people can use, and we've got to be aware of that. But so that's a little bit off topic, but I thought I might expand on that a bit. But guys, stay safe, stay healthy. Thought I'd get out and come out for a bit of a show. I've got to chuck a mask on, so I've got my mask here because obviously coronavirus in full swing now. Singapore's been locked down for another month. So that will make about 2.5 months in total that I will have been locked down and quarantined and all that sort of thing. So quite interesting. But anyway, guys, stay safe, stay healthy, and stay at home still. But things are looking much better. Things are looking like we're getting over that, to the top of that hump, which is great news. So people are starting, countries are starting to talk about leaving, which is great. And if you've got a business right now, start thinking about how you're going to bring your business back online. Because I think, depending on where you are, certainly for the UK, things are going to, there'll be a lull for a while as people ease back in to some things, but actually, other ones will be booming. I chatted last night to Ashley Banfield, who does service accommodations, and what they're talking about is a lot of domestic tourism, staycations, and booming, because international travel won't happen for a while, but internal travel will. So, if you're in an industry that potentially is going to bounce back, great news. If you're in an industry that isn't, then you need to be getting in there and sorting that out now. And same if you're an employee. If you're employed by a business like that, you need to be prepared either for the long game or get ready to run. So hopefully your business has already got what it needs in place for that. All right, guys. Went a bit on, but anyway, talk to you later. See you. Bye.